when you learn about the carpet culture, it basically started in Central Asia by the nomadic tribes. This connection of regions allowed artistic ideas travel across different regions. When it started, it was a necessity. It was never art. In the areas that it was originated, it was basically to preserve them from the cold at the peak of the winters. And then over the span of time, it became culture and piece of art in itself. The Silk Road didn't just help with the origin of the carpet being, it also helped in the growth. As the caravans moving along this route were the vessels through which this culture was exchanged. The Persian floral motif reached Central Asia. Chinese cloud and lotus motifs entered Islamic carpets. And Afghan tribal symbols traveled across border. It's not just a craft of one land or one continent. It's a part and parcel of the whole area. Families and tribes kept their style alive, creating the strong handloom tradition we see now. Now, when I see it transformed it in art, it basically gives me a lot of joy. So it just connected not just weavers but traders and different cultures, helping create this rich and diverse carpet tradition that is still prevalent and keep on growing in the regions of Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, and Central Asia.
It is my great pleasure to warmly welcome Mr. Navid Hussain. Navid Hussain is a partner at HS Rugs, a brand established in 2017 by his father, Haji Mohammed Hussain, along with his two brothers. Navid is deeply engaged in the world of hand-woven carpets with a special focus on Afghan and Persian rug traditions. Through his work at HS Rugs, he brings forward not just carpets, but narratives of culture, craftsmanship, and centuries of artistic exchange. With a keen understanding of the art of craftsmanship, he explores how every knot carries the memory of civilization, of a civilization. Today, he will be sharing his insights on the cultural and historical significance of carpets and their journey across the trade routes that once connected the world. Without further ado, I now invite Mr. Naveed Hussain to share his insights on carpets and the Silk Routes. Good morning again.
Good morning, Dishan. Thank you so much for such a good introduction. So, my name is Navid Hussain. I am a second generation into this craft. My father is the first generation. And what excites me about this craft is basically every day you knew and you know ki you have learned something, but still you mess something up in this because there's a lot to learn in this craft. And today we are just starting with the focal point that basically gives the whole idea of what carpet culture is because when you learn about the carpet culture, it basically started in Central Asia by the nomadic tribes. So those nomadic tribes were basically mostly placed in Central Asia, and these tribes were the originators of this craft. And for them, this craft basically evolved, and what you call as it grew. It grew along with the Silk Route. So discussing the Silk Route would be today the main issue and the main topic of point. Silk Route, how Silk Route had helped carpet culture along the way. So this first painting that you are seeing is just the idea of what we were going to discuss. The first painting is by a very famous artist, and this is a French artist who did this. And this is the first painting that basically gave the Europeans the idea of carpet culture. So carpet culture prior to that was just a myth. For European people, it was just a product in itself. There was no art or culture along with it. But when they saw this painting, Jean-Leon Jerome is the painter of this craft, and he depicted this craft through him, through his eyes, through his craftsmanship. They knew what carpet culture is. So we'll start with our presentation. So the Silk Route basically was a historical route that connected our regions like China, Persia, Central Asia, Afghanistan, and Anatolia. This connection of regions allowed artistic ideas travel across different regions. So if we go through the origin of Silk Route, it started in Han Dynasty in 2nd BCE. Connecting East Asia, the idea was to connect East Asia to Mediterranean. So the early cities were basically this you are seeing it's an elaborate map, which was the last map of the Silk Route, which stretched a long way to a lot of cities. But the original Silk Route was basically Xi'an. There was a city of Xi'an that started. Then Dunhuang, Kashgar, Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, Ctesiphon, and Antioch. Antioch was the last city which connected Europe at that time. So this was the first line of Silk Route. The idea was basically the Chinese people wanted to connect to the Europe. So this started like that. And but along the way, along the years of coming years, it became a very important and focal point of silk trade along this route. This is the Silk Route that you can see. This carpet culture originated by few countries. It was basically the Central Asia like Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkey, China. But main focal point was the tribe of Turkmen people, which was a nomadic migratory tribe. And wherever they were, this craft basically was evolving every day to day. The first thing started is ki when the craft carpet, for example, when it started, it was a necessity. It was never art. In the areas that it was originated, it was basically to preserve them from the cold at the peak of the winters. And then over the span of time, it became culture and piece of art in itself. But it was started as a necessity. It started from the flat weaves. The origins of carpet is basically from the flat weaves. Then it became the weaving ones, the knotted ones came into existence. The knotted ones are basically that was started by the Turkmens because of the necessity of their own. And then over the span of time, it took over the whole Silk Route and the whole area as such, as a product of commodity, as a product of trade. So this is the origins of carpet weaving, as I discussed. The first origin started on the Central Asia, but prior to this, it was a flat weave. There was no particular concept of carpets till a lot of eras. And after this slide, you'll find the one which I will discuss. It's the oldest known carpet that we have found is Baziriak. So the art we can trace it back to 5th century, 5th BCE, only on the cause of the last art that was deciphered or could be taken as a reference key when this art was originated was that particular product itself, because a good patch of carpet was buried under the glacier. So when they extracted it, that's where they got to understand the carpet, how old this craft is. Prior to that, it was just assumptions, and after that, it was just a concrete evidence that this craft can be traced back to 5th BCE. And the other part being when it was discovered, so they got to understand the idea of how developed that craft was at BC itself. So this was the idea. And the Silk Road basically was the prime example of how this craft grew over the time, and it expanded to different cultures and expanded to different countries as of such at that time, as we can see dynasties at that era. So the first picture that you see with the small patch, that is Pazirik. Pazirik is this one only, which was discovered in Siberian glacier. Now it's in the museum. But if you see the elaborate motifs of the carpet, that basically shows how developed the art was at 5th BC. And this basically gives the whole evidence of the craft in itself, and what material was being used, what technique was being done. So all this was done in that era. And if we can see this, we can know that there was some more eras or some more centuries that were passed when this was being done. So it's still a myth, but we do have a concrete evidence, and the concrete evidence is this particular carpet that was there in the St. Petersburg Museum. And the other picture that you are seeing is basically the weaving culture, how the carpets are being woven, the loom, and the ladies that weaving these carpets. So carpet grew along the Silk Route. The Silk Route didn't just help with the origin of the carpet weaving, it also helped in the growth. As the caravans moving along this route were the vessels through which this culture was exchanged. So a lot of people think carpets is just a product of Central Asia. No. In a space of time, Chinese had a good carpet culture. They had carpet weavings. Indian carpet weaving came a very late in the subcontinent, but it came afterwards. And prior to this, Iran was there, Afghanistan was there, Turkey was there. So everything was there, but it's not just a craft of one land or a one continent. It's a part and parcel of the whole area. With the motifs, the Persian floral motif reached Central Asia. So the exchange was like this. When the route stretched from Mediterranean to the East Asia, so the whole idea also transferred from one place to the other place. So Persian floral motifs reached Central Asia, where they were not having much of a floral motifs. Chinese cloud and lotus motifs entered Islamic carpets, as there was no idea of cloud motifs and lotus motifs in the Central Asia as such. And Afghan tribal symbols traveled across border. In the last focal point, and we can see we have Bukharas of India as well. The idea of tribal rugs and geometrical rugs of Afghanistan reached India as well, Bukhara designs. With the weaving technique, there are two weaving techniques that were part from the origins. So one is the Persian technique and one is the Turkish. One is symmetrical, one is asymmetrical. That's spread it across the whole Silk Route. The sharing of technique evolved loom designs and trimming techniques as well. Now, in the upper one, you'll see the symmetric knot that I discussed. It's Turkish knot, and the other one is asymmetric knot, which is Persian knot. So when you see both of them, the difference is basically the Persian knot is mostly used in Iran itself, and the Turkish knot is used in Afghanistan and Turkey, and there are a lot of other nations like Caucasian carpets also use this knot. So it differed from both of them. One is a single knot, one is a double knot. And the next picture that you are seeing are the symbols or motifs that are used in the carpet culture, and that usually spread it across the whole Central Asia and the Silk Route. So there are different motifs that you can see along. Cypress tree is there, and cypress tree can be deciphered in different things. Raw horns, symbol of power. And these are just a small idea of what motifs can mean as a particular in carpet culture. Trade of raw material. So one of the key pointers that led to the growth of carpet culture is the trade of raw materials. When Iran didn't have silk, so Iran had silk from China, and then the wool was coming from Central Asia. It reached to China and different countries as such. Cotton was from India, and natural dyes like indigo, madder, and cochineal also came across to different lands. So while we are seeing this craft growing, it grew only on the basis of there was a good and working trade route that was very prevalent or had a golden age. That golden age helped the carpet culture as such, because when you see every material is not available in a particular land, you have to have that trade route, and that trade route was the Silk Route that basically helped a lot. And what we are seeing now is basically because of the trade route, it has emerged a lot well. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of time to have this craft in this manner till now. So these material have helped create this luxurious and long-lasting carpets. Now these are the products. When you see this, you can see the upper one is silk from China and wool from Central Asia and cotton from India. These are the natural dyes. The upper one is madder, the below one is cochineal and indigo. So the carpet were valuable trade products due to the impact of the Silk Route, and carpets are exported to Europe and the Middle East and sold in bazaar from Samarkand to Istanbul. Carpets basically were a part once used as money, gifts, and diplomatic gifts came to represent the riches, cultures, and royalty nobility. So when we see this, growth of carpet trade was basically due to the huge demand that came across through different dynasties or different rulers. At the era of 16th century, when the Safavis were in control, and Safavis basically can be given a lot of praise for this, when they were there, they had developed it through a different manner. Safavis started this royal craft workshop, royal carpet workshops. Then that idea took over the whole Mughals, and Mughals eventually took it to India as well. At the time of Babur, when Babur came to India, he came with the idea, he was very well influenced with the art and culture of Iran. So he brought this culture to India itself because he liked the carpets and the cultures of Iran. And at the era of Akbar, the first workshop was set up in India. And if you can imagine, Akbar, after that, Jahangir came, Shah Jahan came. So these three kings basically were the prime example of who held the stepping stone of carpet culture in India. Prior to this, India had a good culture of textiles. They had a great grasp of textiles, with silk textiles, with cotton textiles, with wool textiles. But carpet culture was missing. So carpet culture came through India through Mughals. Prior to this, carpet, whichever carpet was there in India, it was basically got across to the trade route, and there was very few people who had access to it. But in the era of Mughals, the whole carpet culture came to India with the workshops, with the whole craft being done in India. Prior to that, the craft was not being done in India. So this is basically the growth of carpet trade. And when you see this culture being evolved, it was only evolved when royals took the interest, and the interest came with a very good growth for the culture as such. Now, this is carpet bazaars. These both carpet bazaars showcases the Iranian bazaars. These bazaars are still in the same shape, same technique that it used to be earlier when it started. And if you can see these bazaars, you can go back in time just to know how the carpet trade was usually done. The only thing that has changed, the clothes of the people, but otherwise this culture and everything is the same as it could be. So the rise of famous carpets. This is basically a very important focal point that has to be discussed in this conversation, because a lot of people, a lot of cultures now tend to tell that we have a good carpet culture, we have a good carpet centers. But these list of these five cities that you are seeing on your screen are basically the historic and stepping stones for this craft. Persia, Isfahan, Tabriz were the basic prime famous carpet centers. In Afghanistan, Herat and Balkh was the prime centers. Herat used to do productions for the Safavid rulers as well. One of the prime examples is the hunting scene, Herat, and some more pieces were there, which are still in museums. Next is the Central Asia. In Central Asia, Bukhara and Samarkand played a very important role, with Bukhara still being known with one of the very good motifs, which is Teke Turkman that they started, and still it is a prime example of the geometrical or tribal motif. Samarkand rugs are very understated, or it's not given its due due popularity, because the Samarkand rugs were basically created out of necessity for the good woolen rugs, and it was started by the nobles and Chinese rulers, whereby they wanted to have designs of their own, but on a woolen thing. They had a good carpet culture over there, but this Turkmen people came up with new designs with flower vases. A lot of designs were there which were very much like something that were liked by the Chinese people. So this originated this craft. Then Turkey, Konya, Anatolia. Turkey is one of the very first examples of who started this, and Konya, Anatolia played a huge role. And when you see Konya, Anatolia's old works, they were one of the masterpieces, and the only thing that has been different from the early days till now, Turkey production centers are very less now, which are doing the craft. Other countries are doing still the same work, but craft of Turkey has declined over the span of time. With China, Niangjia and Jiangxing are basically the two famous trade points that basically did silk carpets of and historical carpets of China. They are doing still now, where a lot of workshops are there that are still being weaving this craft. So this is the prime examples of this. In this, only thing that is missing is the Indian carpet center that started in 16th century. After 16th century, those are started, and the famous cities or the famous places workshops were settled was Lahore, and then you can have Kashmir and Agra. These three places were the prime stepping stones for this culture that started this. Now we have UP Badohi in India, we have Gwalior as such, and Agra is still there, and Amritsar, Punjab is still there, Kashmir is still there. But the three states or three cities that started this was Agra, Lahore, and Kashmir. Kashmir was known for its prime silk carpets, and Agra and Lahore were known for their woolen rugs, woolen carpets. The designs were basically Persian influence, but it has some aesthetics of Indian architecture or Indian prevalence as well. You can find lotus motifs in India, and then most of the designs that were there is basically were it was taken into an interest from the Persian motifs, like floral motifs of Persia. A lot of designs were evolved at that time. This is the Aswan Grand Bazaar, the blue tiles. This is the carpet shop in Herat, Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, there are a lot of centers, but the oldest centers that can be traced to the Silk Roads is Herat. Herat played a very huge role, one of the oldest cities. And prior to this, there was Balkh. Balkh is the oldest known city in Afghanistan, and Herat is an afterward city. But Herat played a very huge role in the Silk Route as compared to Balkh. This is the Bukhara carpet market. So the slide that you're seeing in the Bukharas now, still have their market, they still have their productions. But in Bukhara carpet markets, you'll find the art of all Central Asia. This is an Anatolian carpet market. You can find this in Turkey. These carpets that you're seeing are all vintage pieces. Now, Turkey doesn't have much of a production, so they have their whole old stocks that is basically sold, and the culture is preserved like that only. This is Jiangxing carpet market. Mostly in China, the idea was of silk carpets. Very few people had an interest for woolen. Whereby the cold was too high, the woolen carpets were preferred. So that's why the carpet of woolens were also started in China. So now we come to the carpet and religious influence. This is a very important point at that time, because there were along the Silk Route, multiple places were there where the religious factor was different. Even you can see China, there was a different religion. When you come to Afghanistan, at that time when it was started, it was, I think, Zoroastrianism was there, or prior to that, Buddhism was there. In Iran, Old Persia, it was Zoroastrianism. So different countries were there, different lands were there, and different religions were there. But the only thing is, it over the span of time, because of the trade, because of the influence of the carpet itself, the motifs traveled across as well. So a lot of Islamic art influenced symmetry, and influence of Islamic art was there with the symmetry and geometry. Islamic art, you can find a lot of, there's a design called Gum motif. Gum motif is basically a design which is influenced by the domes of Persian mosques, and geometrical, it has a good symmetry, so it defined the geometrical carpets as well. And then you can see Buddhist and Chinese symbols entered patterns as well. A lot of Buddhist symbols were there, and Chinese symbols were basically vases, swans, lotus. These motifs were started by the Chinese and it traveled across Central Asia as well. Sufi and spiritual idealistic inspired symbolic motifs, a lot of things were there that meant as a Sufi and spiritual. The Char Bagh was there, which were defined a lot in the Mughal architecture. The Tree of Life was there. And one of the great examples of the art that started and the motive that was there was hunting scene. Hunting scene is not given much of a due, but it was one of the very historic designs that started because prior to the hunting scene created, there was no idea of having a face or any animal done in the carpet. That was the first design, which motive that started concept of animals, portrayal of animals, or portrayal of human in the carpet thing. And that was a stepping stone, a different stepping stone, and it was started in the era of Safavids. Safavid, as again and again, if I'm mentioning Safavid, because the Safavids played a very important role of changing a route. Prior to that, carpet was a good thing, but it was just a necessity. But Safavids made it because they have evolved the designs. Tree of Life design was started in the Safavid era. Hunting scene was started in the Safavid era. Charbagh, for example, Four Seasons and the garden motif. A lot of motifs came at the time of Safavis because they were very much influenced with the art. They wanted to evolve art as much as possible. So Safavis can be given a great respect to the form that they evolved the carpet culture. Carpet also became a vessel or carrier of cultural stories along the iconic Silk Road. So this is an important point because when you see a lot of cultures were not similar. They were different cultures. For example, in India, there was not a culture of garden. It was there, but the garden of Charbagh, for example, split of four gardens, was not there. And that came with the Mughals. And that same thing was replicated to the idea of craft itself. You'll find it in textiles, you'll find it in carpets. Then came the idea of Tree of Life, which was not there in India. Then it is there in Tree of Life is in India. There is one more motif which is called as Madar Bacha in Iranian. Now in India, we most of the time you see paisleys. It's a double paisley, usually reflected the sign of fertility. It's a Zoroastrian motif. Now you can see it in a lot of Indian motifs or Indian textiles as such. So there is an influence that Silk Road because the cultures used to come here through the motifs, through the art in itself. So that basically gave a huge push to for reaching a culture to a different land prior to the people itself. The art reached it first. Now, the upper one is Sheikh Safi. The upper motif is called Sheikh Safi. It started in Safavi's era, and the below are you can see the Buddhist symbols that entered the patterns. This is a dragon which is inspired by the Chinese symbols, whereby in Iran there is a good understanding of dragons. In Iran, one of the two auspicious motifs that are given or that used, one is a dragon, the other is Simur. Simur is called phoenix. So they have a mythical stories about dragons and phoenix, but they don't do this kind of a motif whereby the whole dragon is shown, but they have its and bits of dragons in their designs. It's not a whole dragon. Then you can see the spiritual and the ideas of motive. This is a tree of life. Tree of life symbolizes a tree. Basically, in a poetical way, tree is basically a life giver. So it had to be represented to through art, and that art, when it came with the carpet, it represented it a lot. You can find a lot of poetic examples for the trees, and tree itself is a poetic form in itself as a life form. It reaches to a level. It's a magnificent thing. Now this is the legacy of Silk Route. When we see what Silk Route left or what Silk Route have given to the thing is a legacy, long-lasting legacy. The influence of Silk Route remains visible in the carpet designs today. As I said, it traveled to a lot of places. Traditional patterns still tell stories of Asian trade and exchange. With continuous trade along the Silk Route weaving, skills were passed down to generations. As we are speaking, a lot of this new generations doing the traditions and the craft, they are still worried about this craft. They are still trying to grow this craft to a next level because if it is not there, then the craft will die in itself. And a lot of places the craft has been done because there are not new weavers anymore. There are not the new generations are not interested anymore. But this skill was started as a necessity, as I said. But now the necessity is not there because a lot of options are there in the market and the patience level of the people are very less. So that has changed a lot with this craft. But still in Afghanistan and places like Iran, the craft is still being cherished. The craft is still being done in a very big level because the whole generation, a lot of people, families dependent on the craft of carpets. And one of the major economy assets is carpet for Afghanistan. So This is still there, and it will keep on being done in these lands. Families and tribes kept their style alive, creating the strong handloom tradition we see now. There is a particular story that I want to give with this thing. In Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan, there is a tribe called Baluch. People of Baluch are known for their inclusive. They are very inclusive to their thing. They are not much exclusive with their culture as such. But in people of Baluch, there is a craft. They do have carpet craft in their tribes. And the good part and the best part about that is they never make it for the markets. The whole idea is still like that to of necessity. They make for their own homes. There are women that are weaving in their own homes. There's no particular idea of motives. They just weave what they like, and this always comes out very nice because the designs they do is basically the design that they were told or they were taught from the generations. So there's no planning as such with those carpets, and all of the pieces of the tribes of Baluch are exclusive. So this is one such story that I wanted to add with this families and tribe. They're still keeping it alive. Now, the conclusion of all this is basically the silk to transform the craft of carpet weaving. And as much as I put the influence, as much as I give it the wholehearted respect to the part that it was created and it helped what we are seeing right now. And I am very fond of this craft. It's just not for me, it's not just a trade or as a business point of view. If you can, anytime any of you have an idea or have seen a carpet, there's a lot of effort that goes to make a carpet. Given all the respect to all the crafts that are there in the world, carpet culture has a different patience, and it starts with just the wool, which is a natural phenomena that comes. And then that is being taken, molded in a manner that it creates magic in itself when it's done. So that art basically, as in our land, I come from Afghanistan. So in our land, it's a commodity, it's a necessity. But now when you see this as an art, I feel I am very much joyful. I'm very much happy seeing this turned out to be now in an art form of way. And it really gives me a lot of happiness because now whenever I am sharing this, whenever I am with somebody showcasing my craft, and when I'm explaining them, they are very joyed to hear these stories coming from the land itself because it's just not a commodity now anymore. It's art itself. So whenever somebody is buying a carpet or somebody is seeing my carpets, it's always they are excited to learn about it because earlier the excitement was not there. Now, because you are not finding the original craft to the stores, you are not finding the original creators of this craft. So the idea has been very much taken apart from you. Ki like carpets are fake, carpets are not original, they are machine made. So when they see this original craft and they learn about the stories that had been from the land itself and that were there or the part and parcel of this craft, that basically gives the new enthusiasm to these people. So this is basically now what we are seeing is a product, and it's a very different phenomena because a lot of things have already been in art while they were created. But this particular craft was just created as a necessity. Now, when I see it transformed it in art, it basically gives me a lot of joy. So it just connected not just weavers but traders and different cultures, helping create this rich and diverse carpet tradition that is still prevalent and keep on growing in the regions of Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, and Central Asia. So with this, we conclude our talk, and I hope everybody have enjoyed this.